get off of LeBron and Giannis. I mean, Brandon is getting a little emotional with the Lakers and whatnot. So let's go to this topic.
Yeah,
how does this loss affect CP3's legacy moving forward? And guys that might not know, Brandon's favorite player is Chris Paul. So Chris Paul, obviously, in my eyes, is probably the top five, one of the top 5 point guards of all time. He is truly a point guard. But his biggest knock has been he can't win, the big one, right? He had all of the misses when he was playing with the Clippers. Got injured with that Rockets team that everybody thought might have a chance to win a championship. This was his chance, and to be honest, the last to be swept basically after going up 0-2 or going up 2-0 and then dropping 4 games in a row, it has to affect his legacy. How do you think that his legacy is going to be affected? And we'll let you start, man, because I know this one is near and dear to your heart. So let's try to be as objective as possible. What do you think this does to CP3's legacy?
First, I don't know if you can hear someone over there, but he said, I don't know, objective. That's absolutely not true. The best thing about me is I can separate, right? Like, I'm not delusional here. The thing this does for his legacy is this was his, I feel like it was his last chance to win a championship and still be the guy, right? Like, they were talking about he could have been finals MVP the way he played after those first 2 games, and they got those first 2 wins. Now, if he ends up winning a championship, it'll, unless he comes back and still plays at the same high level that he played this year, which, I mean, he's 36, so it's going to be kind of tough. But I don't know, that vegan plant-based diet seems to be working magic wonders for him. But if he can't come back and be that guy, then all the other ships that he might win after that are just pretty much ring chasing ones, right? Like, and those, even though they count and they're still good to have in terms of when you say like, oh, this guy is one of the best point guards in the league, even though he is in my heart, it's hard to actually call him that when like Isaiah Thomas, who is considered probably one of the top point guards in the league, he's got 2. I'm not counting Magic because he's 6'9". Like, that's not fair. You're taller than everybody else. Get out of here. You're not a point guard.
I'll give you my 5, and you tell me if this works. So I put Magic in there because that's what he was listed as. Oscar Robinson, Steph Curry, Isaiah Thomas, and CP3 round out the top 5. So that's who I'm looking at as the top 5 point guards of all time.
So I don't really consider, even though Curry, so guys are listed at point, but that doesn't necessarily make them a point guard, right? And the best thing the thing that I like most about Isaiah Thomas and Chris Paul is that they're true point guards. They control the game. They are floor generals. Steph Curry's not a floor general. He is, he's an undersized shooting guard, right? Like, if he was taller, he'd play 2. Let's not try to, he would play the 2.
Wait a minute.
He would play the 2. Go ahead. You want to unmute yourself? And
Wait a minute. So
that's fine.
So we're saying one's not tall enough, but the other one's too tall. Like, you have to be in a certain like height range to be a point guard. I don't know what are you talking about?
Go ahead, Brandon.
I'm not saying that he is too short to be a point guard. I'm saying he's too short to be a 2 guard, right? So it's clearly not.
But he's talking about, you said Magic was too tall to be.
Yeah, Magic's not a point guard. The guy played center sometimes. Just because Ben Simmons is listed as a point guard, but when you go to fill out the All-Star ballot, you don't put him in as a point. Like, it's ridiculous. He's not a point guard. For positionless basketball, yeah, sure, he's a point guard. And Magic couldn't shoot, so he might as well have been a center. His jump shot was probably the ugliest jump shot.
That's crazy that a center has the most assists ever.
Oh, he's not John Stockton. John Stockton has the most assists ever by a mile. And so if we're going to go top point guards, yeah, it's going to be Jason Kidd, Chris Paul, Isaiah Thomas, Stockton. Like, we're going to go actual point guards. Like, that's the way I'm going to go.
Way to give your guy some bail so that he doesn't get kicked out of the top 5 by just eliminating guys that are already better than him at that position because of height. Because of height. Like,
they're more skilled players, but they're not better than him at the position. They're more suited for the positionless game that is today.
This is emotional math by Brandon Campbell.
Oh,
Go ahead, Esteban. So what do you think that losing this championship does for Chris Paul's legacy?
For me, I don't really think it changes anything. I still think he's a top 5 point guard. I don't think winning this championship I felt like winning this championship would have been cool, but it doesn't erase what has happened already, right? He's already lost numerous of times. And, it took him, he didn't get past the second round in LA. And when he was playing in Houston, that was the first time he got to the third round. And
this is his first time in the finals.
Yeah, finally he got to the finals. I don't know what he wrote. I'm sorry, he's writing stuff. Anyhow, I had my top 5 that I feel like it was the same as you. Magic is all time to me. Somebody not calling Magic a floor general, it just doesn't watch basketball. Like, to me, that's absolutely insane. But I had Magic and Isaiah. I think those two are top notch. And then Kid, Steph, and Chris Paul, however you want to round it out. I know I was going to get flack for Steph because he isn't really the natural point guard, but he generates so much attention, and I might be biased because that's like my all-time. He's awesome, but he generates so much attention that he does kind of generate. He is a floor general in that sense. You always have to pay attention to him. But as far as CP3's legacy, I really don't think that it changes much, man. I mean, whether he wins a ship or not, the way he's played and what he's done and how he's turned franchises around from being, sub 500 to a winning organization, the attitude that he puts into that organization, what he did in OKC, what he did for the Suns this year, I think that's just, that speaks volumes to, first of all, what a leader he is, and then, how he will go down and be viewed. He was just a leader, and he played the position to a T. It sucks that he was injured and had an injury-plagued postseason career, because I feel like all the injuries that he had, they were all in the postseason. It feels like that anyways. But I just don't think that – I wasn't going to think of him less or more whether he won this championship. I just, a championship would be good on his resume for sure. But at this point, it's a Gary Payton championship with the Heat. That's all. That's the only thing. That's what it is for me. Jason Williams championship.
So this is where I think it does affect him. And it's not going to affect him now, but it could affect him in the future when some of these young guys that are up and coming, that are putting together their resume, if a guy like Trae Young ends up winning a couple of championships, if a guy like John Morant ends up winning a few championships, I think it opens the door for CP3 to be knocked out of that top 5. And the reason for that is these guys, if they're with CP3 being as great of a point guard he is, not winning that big one opens the window or opens the door for somebody who comes in and is somewhat competitive with CP3 as far as all of those intangibles that we talked about and his ability to set up the offense and lead a team and so on and so forth. But they get a championship as well. Now it's going to be pretty difficult to debate it, because there's always going to be that caveat. Well, yeah, CP3 was a great point guard. However, Trae Young won a championship, or however, John Morant won a championship. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where it can affect his legacy, because now it gives an out for people to take him out of that top 5 in the future if somebody gets close to that ability. Because guys like Steph, they're certified to, 3 championships. He's certified as one of them. Isaiah Thomas, 2 championships certified. Magic, 5 championships certified. Oscar won a few championships certified. So they're certified. The only person, and it's the reason why John Stockton doesn't get the type of praise that he deserves, right? It's because he never won that championship. And it wasn't until Jason Kidd really won that chip with Dirk in Dallas that he became certified. So I think that's what it is. It's going to be that feather in the cap that's missing for CP3 to be stamped and certified top 5 of all time, unapproachable. He is. If somebody else comes up, he's going to be the first one to be booted because he didn't have that championship. What do you think about that, Brandon?
No, I think that's pretty fair because the one thing that everybody wants to talk about, I mean, even E and I, when we're on the pod and we're debating players, it's always championships, right? Like that's what it all boils down to. And real quick sidebar, Esteban said it wasn't going to change anything for him if Chris Paul had won the chip. He's absolutely lying because his biggest argument is that Chris Paul's a loser because he doesn't have one. But if Chris Paul has one, he clearly couldn't say that anymore. So 90% of his arguments would be invalid. Not that they're anything anyway.
And it's true. It would have certified him, right? Because this team would be considered his team. Would be considered his team. Go ahead.
And that's the biggest knock. And that's why I wanted him to win this one because it's still his team at this point. It's not DeAndre Ayton's playing better. It wasn't Booker wasn't quite there yet. He's still young enough to where it's like, no, Chris Paul was the one that truly came in and led this team. And now it's not going to happen. And you talking about Trae Young and winning championships, like that's absolutely possible because Trae Young he's a point guard, man. That guy, he controls the game with his pass. So if he starts winning chips, like that's going to be rough because it can push him right out. But I think where he'll end up falling, though, is more along the lines of like Charles Barkley, right? Like Charles Barkley's a 4, and he gets mentioned as being one of the greatest players, but you don't ever say like, oh, he was one of the greatest 4s ever. It's just like, oh, he was a great player that never won a chip.
Right. Same Karl Malone, John Stockton. I think, he falls into that category of guys who just weren't good enough to take their team like over the top. And it's unfortunate because obviously that it takes away from the greatness, and it's just what us, like guys that are just debating have to go through. But it is that, and he had a chance to like certify himself, but it didn't happen, and he has to live with that from this point on because it's always going to be talked about as far as part of his legacy is being one of the greatest point guards that just for some reason couldn't put it together when it is. And the thing about CP3 is, he's been kind of, at least with the Clippers, there was some times where he was one of the reasons why they were losing. You know what I mean? Right. And so that's another negative that they have. So I think he's done a lot to repair his reputation because the one move of him moving to the Suns really took the Suns from a team that didn't make the playoffs last season to a team that was, second place in the division, made it to the finals. So to me, I think it was the ascension. CP3 was putting together that year that was going to put him in the greatness category forever. And it just needed that stamp of approval with the championship, and he fell short. So a lot of people are going to forget what he did this season, which is unfortunate because it was a great season for a point guard to be able to take this young team and make them pretty much overachieve, beating the Lakers. And they beat all the team. They beat the Lakers. They beat the Clippers. All the teams that were supposed to be better than them, they beat all those teams handily, right? And so, and Chris Paul was a big part of why they were winning. So it's unfortunate, but, one person's misery is another person's gain. It's pretty much certified Giannis, and he just played better, man. And so you can't take that away from these guys. Anything else?
I think playing in this era does really help Chris Paul in that there aren't a lot of point guards, so to speak. There's a lot of shooting guards and stuff like that, guards that do a bunch of different things, right? So when we look back at this era, we can look back and really Chris Paul will really stand out because he was true to his position, right? I think that helps him because when we like I said, that keeps him in the top 5 for me, is that we look back and be like, in an era of all of this, he really did play that position, and he took his team further than any traditional point guard took anybody else in this era. You know what I mean?
I agree, but like I said, if one of these guys ends up winning some chips, even if they don't have the type of point guard, quote unquote, level or rating that CP3 has, just their ability to win that chip is going to knock CP3 out of that top 5. Brandon, we'll give you the last word because this is your guy.
Don't worry, he's coming back next year. Bigger and better than ever.